Ollie, as you know, on the Friday before the game, we do a show giving you a synopsis of what David Moyes said in his press conference. If you haven't already, watch this morning's video on whether or not David Moyes deserves another season at West Ham. Russ is living it up in sunny Dubai, so you're stuck with me today. We are going to be running through this afternoon's press conference ahead of the Leicester game and see what we can find out from Moyes' comments. So, jumping into the first comment from David Moyes. On needing a break, he said, all the managers today will be feeling the same. Looking forward to rest and recovery time. Most of the managers have been back since the 1st of July. It's been a long season. So obviously, as we know, this season does feel a little bit like it's actually gone on forever. And for West Ham, it's actually been quite a stressful season. We've got the opportunity now to actually finish the season really strong and finish as high as 12th, which we would not have seen a few months ago. The job is not done for either side, though, as Leicester will be ready to put up a fight to stay in the Premier League. And we've got this game and Prague still to keep our eyes on. So the focus is not done. And as you'll see in some of the other slides that we're going to chat through, how we balance that is going to be a little bit of a difficult situation, but I'm positive that we can actually manage to do both. But obviously, for me, main focus, Conference League. Premier League is like the most distant thought you could have in the world right now. So jumping into comment number 2. On midweek off, we've obviously had a little bit of a break, and that is quite rare for us. David Moyes said, I've not been sure what to do. I found myself things to do to keep occupied. It's been relentless, and just to have a couple of days downtime has been nice. So it's not been any secret that we've had a lot of games within a short period of time. So I'm sure that a couple of days to recoup and reset will be beneficial in the long term, especially for some players who I'm sure are quite tired, and it will help with the squad rotation as well. I'm sure there's plenty of preparation, though, for David Moyes to get on with, so I'm sure he can't have been that bored in the last few days. And then moving on to the next comment, in terms of league position, he said, I see it as a chance to get another league place up. I think if you gave me this position a few weeks ago, I would have snapped your hands off. So interestingly, while I've definitely been as guilty as everyone else, just focusing on Conference League, and it just feels like a very strange position to be in, where the Premier League has suddenly become an afterthought after being so stressed about relegation. The moment we became mathematically safe from relegation, and obviously we've now made it into the final of the Conference League, it really doesn't seem to matter to me anymore. And all I want is us to have that fully fit squad for us to go into the final on the 7th with. So as Moyes said there, we would have jumped at this opportunity to finish 12th previously. And I think because of that, we need to remember that a win is still so important. But the opportunity that we currently have in the Conference League, it cannot be we can't do anything detrimental to that with the Premier League. So as much as I am desperate for us to get a few more points, I don't want it to come at any cost, including definitely ruining or injuring any of our players. So in terms of beating Leicester, Moyes said, I'm glad it's not us. That was in terms of being in the relegation zone. He said, we have to go and do our job and see if we can finish a bit higher up. We're preparing ourselves for a final, and we have to get the right balance. So touching on what I was talking about a second ago there, it really is going to be about finding the right balance. And I don't think that's going to be easy at all. Finishing higher in the league would be amazing for me, but for me, the priority has got to be preventing any injuries, because I would be so frustrated if we ended up with some key players out in the Conference League final and that ended up costing us for the sake of trying to get a couple of places in the Premier League. Don't get me wrong. I think if we were to finish 12th in the Premier League, at the beginning of the season, I'd have been slightly disappointed. Halfway through the season, I'd have bitten your hand off for that. And even about 4 weeks ago, I'd have said, like, that's an incredible finish, considering how much we have struggled, how much the new signings have struggled, how much we struggled to find any form. It's just been difficult throughout. So for us to have the opportunity to finish there is incredible. But we really, really, really have to focus on being able to balance everything, because we cannot ruin our chances of this final. So up next, we have got on squad balance. We want everybody fresh, but we want them all able and prepared. All of those things are coming into our thinking. We had a really good victory last weekend. We won at Alkmaar as well. Squad rotation is not going to be simple, as we've already said for this game. We've got 10 days, though, between the Leicester game and playing in Prague. So we do want players to be match fit, but also don't want them being tired or injured. And I think getting that balance is going to be key to our success in the coming weeks. Personally, I think that means giving some players 20 or so minutes at most. And if anybody even feels the slightest tweak, the slightest overstretch, I want them putting their hands up and coming off that pitch immediately, because we just can't take any risks. We've done well recently, obviously, including the result against AZ Alkmaar that we touched on there, our 3-1 win against Leeds, but we are relying on putting in the performance of our lives on the 7th. So we just have to get that balance right. And I think we can do it and still play some of our better players, but maybe only for a short period of time. But also we've seen that players like Fornals are desperate to be given these opportunities. So I'd love us to do that. Fornals, Downs, we've got so many. Obviously, Ings hasn't had a chance to prove himself. So this could be people's opportunity to actually go and show us why maybe they should be in the starting 11. So if ever there was a time to actually put people to the test, to give them the chance to show why they're at West Ham and what they can do and why we shouldn't let them go and why they should be starting ahead of another player, this is it. And every fan is basically willing us to just rest players and keep everyone fit. So there's probably never been a better time to actually do that. Then we have got David Moyes on players' families. So he said, I'd expect it if you get to a final in regards of families coming along. We're looking forward to the families being with us. So the players, friends and families are going to be staying out in Prague. And I'm sure that it will mean a lot. We don't get opportunities like this coming around often, as we all know. So here's hoping that they've got a reason to celebrate with their loved ones in Prague on the 7th. Then David Moyes on Rice's goals. He said, we wanted to add goals to his play. We want midfielders to add goals, and Declan is least likely, but he can score goals. So as we have seen, particularly in recent games, Deckers can score a goal. We've always known that people say that in training, he's incredibly accurate with his shots. But maybe in recent seasons, we've actually seen him kind of kick it into row Z a little bit more often. But recently, it is a part of his game that he's really improved on. And it was probably the part of his game that was missing in terms of when you look at the world-class midfielders, his actual goal stats probably weren't as good. But as we know, what he actually does for an entire team is ridiculous. And he's only getting better, as we all know. So hopefully it'll also add to his price tag and mean that we don't have to shift anywhere under that 120 million kind of mark if we are looking at potentially getting rid of him. Still makes me sad thinking about that. But it is incredible, and you can see how passionate he is about it. And every single goal has mattered massively recently. So the more goals, the merrier, in my opinion. And then we are going to move on to Moyes' final comment that we're going to touch on from the press conference. He said, on team news, Naif will be available, not Aguerable. He missed out with a dead leg against Alkmaar. We had a couple. Emerson had a knock to his knee. Skamaka is still recovering from his operation. So in terms of team news, I don't want to jinx anything. So all I'm going to say is that the injury situation is fine with me at the moment. Having a gear back will be important. And as I've said before, and I'll say it again, can we please just keep everyone injury free? That is the main goal. And with the Leicester game, we just need to make sure that we're all being clever. And I really hope that players, if they are struggling whatsoever, will put their hand up to come off because they know how much they matter. We need that starting 11 that we finally found, that's finally gelling and it's finally all working. We need those players on the pitch. And that, yeah, we just can't risk anyone getting hurt. So it's all looking good. And obviously, as you can see from Moyes' press conference, we've had a little break, but all thoughts now turn to how we manage the last game of the season, and not obviously just rolling over and throwing it away when we have an opportunity to go 12th, but also what we do in terms of preparing for the final. Because while it would be all good to say, let's just play a second string team and completely rest everyone, match fitness does play a part in it. And if you haven't played any game of football in 10 days and you only played 40 minutes in the game before, it is going to affect you. So we do need to be clever in terms of actually playing players the right amount, but at the same time, not playing them too much. So there's a lot to think about. So as expected, a lot of the talk surrounds preparation, squad management ahead of the final. It would obviously be so good to get those 3 points. Comment below and let us know what you think we should actually do in terms of team management, because I know it's a really difficult one. And personally, that's what I'm saying. Play people for maybe 20 or so minutes, then take them off, or sub them on for the last 20 or so, depending on whether we need them or not, and then use training to actually get people match fit, make sure their legs are working, and and just get all the sports therapists, all the sports masseuses that you can imagine, just have them all on hand. Physios everywhere. That's all we want. So we have got a Leicester preview coming up. If you haven't seen it, that is coming out, where we speak with the final whistle, and there's plenty more great content to keep you entertained. So keep an eye out. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. And until then, have the best weekend. And of course, come on, you Irons.